Welcome to Martech Advisor's Executive Interview Series. I'm Ginger Conlon, a contributing editor to Martech Advisor. And joining us today is Dave O'Flanagan, who is CEO of Boxever. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks for having me, Ginger.
So glad you're here with us today. We are going to talk about trends and opportunities with customer data platforms, and especially in context of omni-channel marketing. So I'm very excited about discussing that today. But first, let's talk about Boxever for a minute. Can you give us introduce us to Boxever and what makes it unique?
Sure. We're a data science company, and we've developed a product, our Customer Intelligence Cloud, that's used by some of the world's leading airlines today, so companies such as Emirates, Air New Zealand, and a host of others globally, really to help them, one, understand who their customer is, and two, take that information that they know about the customer and determine what the right type of personalization or next best action is for the customer, regardless of channel. That could be helping them personalize the website, personalize a mobile interaction, or indeed helping them with some customer experience initiatives in the contact center, or for some of our airline customers in the airport or even in the airplane.
Oh, that's awesome. So let's start by setting the stage with a definition of what exactly is a customer data platform and how is it different from other tools that help marketers manage data?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think this term CDP has been coined over the last couple of years to try help people understand that a new piece of data management is required to enable marketers to become more effective at their job. So this is really, for us, a CDP is a capability or a piece of technology that allows you to centralize all your customer data, both traditional CRM and demographic data, but also large volumes of behavioral data that are typically present in digital channels such as web, mobile, email, and other, and bring it together into a unified profile or unified platform that allows marketers to become smarter with how they interact with their customers. So what it really does is helps marketers understand who their customers are and how they interact across multiple channels. And depending on the type of CDP, some CDPs also allow marketers to be able to personalize based on the data that they've gleaned across multiple channels. So, our definition in Boxever is certainly that, one, you've got to be able to centralize this data across all the different channels that we're integrated with. But two, which is really, really important, is being able to take that information and create value from it, help marketers create actions that could be sending a more personalized email, it could be personalizing the website, or indeed connecting with the contact center and being able to contact center agent be more effective in how they may resolve an issue with the customer.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's awesome to have all that data, but there's not really huge value unless you're actually using it for something. And it seems like the biggest benefit of a customer data platform, like you said, is the ability to help marketers personalize their communications and offers. Interestingly, according to a survey that actually Boxever recently conducted, only 20% of marketers and customer experience leaders who responded are satisfied with their current level of personalization. So I found that really interesting. So how can the customer data platform really help them take that personalization, to the level that they'd like to see it?
I think it's really interesting. A conversation that we have internally is, what is personalization? And we're trying to think about, what does personalization mean to marketers? Is it hello first name, or is it, we saw you looked at this pair of shoes recently, and we're going to retarget you endlessly on the on different websites, or is it going to be something a little more meaningful, a little more deep, a little more something that means something to the customer? And certainly, we set out not to help marketers retarget more effectively, although that's a big use case when they want to be more effective in their marketing activities. It's really, how can you leverage the information that a customer has willingly shared with you, whether it's transactional or behavioral, and then use that information to really build a more meaningful relationship with the customer, to be able to draw. And personalization is simply a way to say that, yes, you've given us this information and we've taken the time and care to be able to try minimize the amount of interactions with you. But also, when we create an interaction, we send you an email or you're on our website, we're going to take the time to make sure that we're as helpful as possible when we interact with you. So, it's interesting that the survey is interesting in that, I think every marketer wants to personalize, right? So since in the history of time, commerce has been built on relationships, right? And I think that the essence of building a commercial relate or a commercial transaction is two parties coming together and trying to understand what each other wants, and then coming up with a solution that both parties feel happy with. And for me, I think that when we talk about personalization in the marketing context, I think a lot of the time we're getting caught up in tailored ads or triggered ads and all these different things that certainly drive value for a marketer. But when we think about how do we really understand who the customer is, and how do we really create and take the time to create these useful communications to the customer, that's where we're focused on, and that's what we believe personalization should be for marketers. It's a hard thing, right? I think all the marketing clouds would say they do it and it just comes out of the box. A lot of different technologies will stretch personalization in different ways to accommodate their particular capabilities of their product. But for us, what we've seen firsthand with some very, very big organizations around the world is that they're struggling with, one, understanding who their customer is, because the data is locked away in lots of different silos and it's disconnected. And two, once they've connected the data, they're struggling really to be able to sequence the communication across multiple different channels, because when people say multiple channels, they typically mean multiple different technologies, and again, these are disconnected. So we see Boxever as the glue that sits in the middle of this ecosystem, connecting all your data and connecting the right next best action or right decision for the customer, making all the different technologies that exist in that ecosystem smarter. And for us, it's a core pillar of personalization. If you don't have that, you're not going to really be able to get too far with personalization.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's so much opportunity with personalization, right? Like you said, like they're retargeting and being more um, you know personal by using customers' names or something transactional. You went to this destination on your last cruise. How about this similar destination on your next cruise? Kind of communications. But one of the things I thought was interesting is the whole premise that you're talking about in terms of next best action, because sometimes personalization doesn't necessarily have to be a sale or a conversion to build that relationship and build customer value and lifetime value. So what advice do you have in terms of using either next best action or some other maybe not first thought type of personalization to build your marketing performance and maybe have a more of a significant impact?
Yeah, look, let me give you two examples, right? I think these things always come to life when you can talk about real world tangible examples, right? So the first one is a classic example of improving acquisition. So with one of our customers, we synchronize almost 100 million profiles, which is information that we've gathered for all our customers about the guests from their system, and we synchronize that to Facebook. And what we're doing there is we're giving Facebook far more granular information that Facebook wouldn't have typically in their ecosystem. And using their custom audience feature in Facebook, we allow them to become really, really targeted in terms of the types of ads they display to their customers, in addition to the data that they have from Facebook. We've seen an almost triple digit improvement in effectiveness in terms of what they used to do with just some flat Facebook data and what they do now with their first party data combined with the Facebook data. So that's a really good example of personalization. So what do we know about a customer? What's the right next best action? And in this case, what's the right next best ad to show them? And we do that through the Facebook platform. I think another really good example, which for me really talks to where we believe the value of Boxever truly is, it's about helping customers. Yeah, when there's times of when something may go wrong in terms of a service issue with an organization. So obviously we work with some very big airlines, and one of our airline customers is currently deploying a solution to help them more effectively manage their lost bags when there's a big issue with the customer, right? So think about that today. When a customer, you as a traveler, you arrive at the baggage carousel, you watch everybody else's bags come out. At some point, you realize that your bag's not coming out. It's an anxious, frustrating experience. And when you do that, you got to go queue at baggage claim. They may or may not know where your bag is. And all in all, a really, really damaging experience for a brand, right? And it's the first thing you'll tell your friends when you go home. You'll talk about the really terrible thing that happened to your bags. So for us, when we're working with one of our customers, it's not about these things happen from time to time. They're operational issues. I think the question is, how do we help the organization connect with the customer and really try to proactively deal with that issue? So we sat down and mapped it out and looked at what are the right next best actions at various points in the customer journey, right? So the first thing is, because we're connected not just to their customer data, we also have an operational view of data, whether it's flight delays, gate changes, or indeed bags making a plane. We're able to proactively determine that a bag isn't on a plane for one of their passengers, right? So we generate a notification based on our algorithms associated with the data to notify the customer, notify the cabin crew attendants in flight that, hey, John in 42A, his bag isn't on the plane. And we can also calculate that using the data in our customer data platform, calculate the lifetime value of that customer, and ultimately whether it's worth offering that customer a business class upgrade subject to availability, right? So in that scenario, the cabin crew attendant is equipped to actually speak with the customer and start to deal with the issue proactively. It's still a bad experience for the customer overall, but what they can see is that the airline is taking the time and effort to be able to proactively intervene. And so that's the first part of the customer journey. After that, when the plane lands, we're connected to their chatbot. And in that scenario, we make a notification on your Facebook Messenger. You can go into Messenger and speak with a bot there and start to resolve the issue, find out where your bag is, maybe share the address details and so forth, and actually start to resolve the issue. If you're not comfortable in that interface, you're offered that you can click the call from there, and that click will take you straight into the contact center. We'll have determined that needs to go straight to an agent given the severity of the issue, and the agent will have the context of the conversation. They'll know that the customer received an upgrade. They know that they may not be comfortable dealing with in the chatbot, and we'll be able to speak with the customer, build rapport, and hopefully resolve the issue before they ever get to the baggage carousel. So I think for me, there's a broad application of this type of technology, but in every case, it's trying to do the right next best thing for the customer, either generating more revenue for the airline, but building value for the customer, but also looking at other kind of less tangible things like promoting net promoter score, customer experience, and building brand loyalty through experiences like I've just shared with you.
Right. That's amazing. I mean, you think about that's an opportunity where customer service in a way becomes marketing, because when you're proactive with that kind of service, yes, the customer isn't having the best experience, but the fact that the company is trying to proactively help them, they're going to walk away telling their friends and family about the good experience they had, even though the bag got lost, instead of the horrendous experience.
Exactly right, and it becomes now a real kind of brand moment, right, where people share something that this airline really took the time and effort to try solve what was a pretty difficult issue, And for us, I think airlines are really interesting. Travel is really interesting in that those are examples where, one, we're obviously connected to the digital channels, so we're very connected and influence the sales and marketing activities where you buy the product online. But also we're very connected to the service opportunity. And a large part of an airline experience is, what's your day of travel like? What was your flight like? Did your bags arrive? And all those different service opportunities. So, once as we connect to more and more of those different experiences, we feel that we can, by connecting the dots, we'll be able to deliver what most travelers aspire to, which is not to be thinking about travel. It just happens. It happens seamlessly and effortlessly. But that requires a huge amount of effort behind the scenes, like a duck, right? The duck's gliding effortlessly across the surface of the water, but underneath he's paddling furiously. And that for me is kind of a good synopsis of Boxever, right? We're not really present all the time. We shouldn't be obvious to the customer, but behind the scenes we're subtly changing and managing the customer experience such that everything is effortless, everything is easy, whether it's effortless buying or easy buying, or when things go right or things go wrong in the service context. We're there making sure that we're doing the right thing by the customer and making sure their travel experience is okay.
Right. So a point that you made a couple of times is the importance of basically breaking down silos, or at least if there are going to be silos, having a way to bring the customer data together so that you can kind of have that more holistic view. So, and interestingly, in that same Boxever survey, data integration and cross-channel execution are two of the biggest blockades to achieving personalization across channels. So, I mean, you've given some great examples, but how are customer data platforms helping marketers overcome these type of obstacles?
Look, I think in their essence, at the essence of a customer data platform, it's about being able to integrate data from multiple channels. It's be able to dedupe the information, being able to stitch together identity from multiple different areas based on emails, cookies, payment details, first name, last name, and trying to assemble what is a very, very clear view of the customer and how they interact across channels. I think what's probably left unsaid when people start deploying marketing clouds or email solutions or things like that is that they need effective data management to be able to maximize the value or extract the maximum value from them. And typically, what you find is that if you're going to deploy one of the big vendors in email or similar, what needs to happen is the data needs to be managed externally. So the customer either needs to build it themselves and assemble all this data from multiple different data sets, and that's an expensive process that some customers are happy to do, and others are looking to vendors like Boxever to be able to take that load off. And essentially, what they're trying to do is assemble, a best in breed marketing stack from best in breed technologies that allows them to achieve their marketing goals. And typically, what you find is that data management and assembling this data and working out what to do next with the customer is typically left to a big implementation of an email tool or a big implementation of a similar type of marketing tool. And in those scenarios, I think the first thing a CDP does is, because it's pre-built to solve that problem, it means that that particular issue is taken off the marketing's long list, the marketer's long list of things to build. I think as cloud becomes more relevant and these tools become more, I wouldn't say plug and play, but certainly the integration becomes a little easier. What we're going to see is kind of marketers being able to establish, what I need a DMP, I need a CDP, I need an email tool, I need a CMS, and all these pieces, they'll go and choose the best in breed from the market, and these pieces will come together relatively easy, knowing that they'll all have the data and algorithms and analytics they'll need to be effective, because there's a CDP at the heart of that system.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. So I definitely want to talk about customer experience again, but first, because you were talking about the way CDPs bring things together, let's talk for a minute about process. How can using a CDP help marketers improve the efficiency of some of their key processes?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I think one of the challenges that most marketers have is good analytics, right? And understanding if things are working effectively. I think one of the things that is probably left to the end in terms of CDP benefits, when think CDP, you think, one, getting my data together, and that's a cost saving essentially, and then two, being able to personalize, which is typically revenue generation. A key part of having that data together is having powerful analytics available on top of it, so you can know what's going on. So what's my campaign performance for outbound campaigns? What type of inbound campaigns are working on my website or on my mobile site? And are my teams working effectively with all this data to be able to generate those outcomes? So one of the things that we've certainly found over the last few years is that there's a kind of a marketing operations is becoming a bigger part of the marketing team, where they're responsible for data management, they're responsible for campaign creation and analytics. And I think underpinning those processes is helping those guys be more effective. So marketing operations a few years ago was all about exporting lists from one system and importing them to another and trying to assemble the analytics after the fact. I think with a CDP, because they're all pre-connected into the systems of record, which is the sources of the data, as well as being integrated with all the different systems, that the systems of engagement, the systems that integrate with that actually deliver the experience or the interaction, I think it means that the marketing operations function can focus on higher order things, because the data plumbing, the integration, all the analytics is already available, and they can start to focus on optimizing different processes and operations. That means they can be more effective in their job. So I think for us, we've seen the advent of kind of marketing operations becoming a larger part of the marketing ecosystem or the marketing team in some of these big organizations. And we feel that our technology allows them to be more effective and much more productive in their role.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about challenges. I mean, all technology, all with all the great advantages technologies brings, that there are always challenges to using them, and sometimes that's organizational change, sometimes that's just maybe data quality. What are you seeing as some of the challenges with CDPs, and what can marketers do to get around or to overcome them?
I think sometimes CDP might be seen as a silver bullet to solve everything that every challenge a marketer faces. Certainly, we're pretty pragmatic in what it can do, and some of the things you need to do in addition to be able to deploy it effectively. So, we always say it's people, process, and technology, and the CDP certainly solves a large part of the technology piece. But if you don't have the people that understand its capabilities and the processes around it to effectively use it in different channels and make sure that your data management is working effectively, you're not going to get the value you expect from a CDP. So, from our perspective, we've seen this firsthand in some big organizations. Digital transformation is a word that's, I would say, overused. Um, but the struggle that companies have trying to transform around their customer is not something to be underestimated, right? And what a CDP promises is that it'll be able to deliver the right action to a customer regardless of channel. What that means is that companies that may have been organized around their e-commerce, their email, their acquisition, and these functions, even within marketing and sales, were typically siloed. What this means is that those organizations now will have a centralized data set and potentially a centralized strategy for contacting their customers that ultimately may conflict with their KPIs that they've traditionally had, right, in terms of revenue per email sent or whatever they are, right? So I think, the very essence of, I feel, digital transformation, is really about customer centricity and enabling new interfaces with the customer. So when you speak about it like that, having a CDP or having a CDP like capability is obviously key to being able to enable that. But what can't be underestimated is that some of the people need to be able to change how they work, and a lot of the processes that worked in terms of just getting your emails out or getting your website up and getting transactions completed on a website may need to change if you really want to offer a customer centric proposition to each customer independent of channel. And I think that's where a lot of organizations are focusing their time and energy now, being able to really understand how do they communicate with their customer, how do they manage that, in the light of more traditional approaches, and how do they manage that change? Because one is the change around the customer, two is change around the proliferation of all the different channels that exist and the different opportunities to contact. We've seen voice just come really fast over the last year or so. There's a lot of talk about chatbots that seems to, there's all these new interfaces to reach the customer. So marketers are kind of bamboozled, right? And when they talk about digital transformation, there's so many things moving. It's trying to find out, how do you pick the things that are right for your business, and how do you deploy them in a safe, structured way? And for us, a CDP is absolutely critical in being able to understand all this, the channel proliferation, and being able to communicate with their customers. But I would say it doesn't come for free, right? You also need to add people and train people and have processes that can leverage that type of technology effectively.
Absolutely. So, experience, of course, is a hot topic with all of this. You've given a couple of really terrific examples of how using customer data platform can create that better customer experience. And so with all of what you were saying, there's so much advice that we could have a whole nother conversation on, what you could do to improve the customer experience. But if you could give one example, and especially in that omni-channel context, of how using a customer data platform can really significantly impact the customer experience, what would that one example be?
Um, I think the example I gave with the lost bag, I think, is a really good example of connecting the dots across channels. And the challenges that we face there were not really about gathering vast quantities of digital data from channels like the website or mobile or even from the acquisition space. It was really about connecting the dots to lots of more traditional legacy systems that may or may not have APIs. And I think for me, the really exciting use cases for CDP, the real kind of wow moments are the ones where digital meets physical, right? The example that I just gave around the lost bag is something that I think every traveler would like to have. Their airline would like their airline to behave like that. Another really good example that I heard recently from another airline was that they determined they gathered all these stats and information about the customer, but one of the things they monitored was the number of aborted landings that a passenger had, right, in an airline. So they looked at, and they when you think about customer experience, they looked at some of the things that really created anxiety for a passenger when they fly, and this was one of the things that they surfaced. So they were able to track if a passenger was on a flight where an aborted landing happened. And what they were able to do then, and this is a very simple example, what they were able to do then was for a customer who had, I think, more than 3 aborted landings in a period of time, they notified the pilot on the customer's next flight. And then the pilot went down and spoke to the passenger personally about aborted landings, why they happen, not to worry about them. And what I loved about that was that, it wasn't a big data play or a big digital play. It was really about connecting the dots. It was about identifying the types of customer experience that airline wanted, identifying where their passengers were concerned or had anxiety, and then using data from a technology like a CDP to be able to connect the dots between a person, the pilot, and the person, the passenger. And I think that's a really good example of where thoughtful customer experience can create brand moments that customers will talk about forever. And it comes back to that point. We see a kind of a convergence, right? Customer experience and marketing are two domains where both are all about the customer. Maybe marketing traditionally wasn't all about the customer. It was about emails. It was about page impressions. It was about cookies. But I think as we can see, the market's moving this way, and now marketers are really thinking about who their customer is, how can they build a relationship with them, in the same way as that somebody in customer experience is thinking along the same lines. And certainly we at Boxever see these are two sides of the same coin. And it's really about how can you create value for your customer such that they spend more with you and they'll talk more about you and they believe they're a brand that they want to engage with.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example. I love that. That is the personal touch. What you were just saying also is, what's coming up next, the direction that marketers need to go in terms of being more customer centric. So let's wrap up with a look forward. What's coming up that you're excited about in 2 areas? One, in the market in general, is there a trend or a tool that you're really excited about? And also within Boxever, any new features or upgrades coming up we should know about?
Yeah, look, we here in Boxever are really excited about the advent of AI and advanced analytics in marketing. It seems now that statistics and AI has been around since the 1980s. I think the advent of cloud platforms like customer data platforms and the proliferation of kind of open source analytics packages means that AI is kind of within the reach of most organizations now. For us, when we see AI in the market, a lot of companies are talking about chatbots or voice and things like that. For us in Boxever, we see AI as being a way to dramatically improve the effectiveness of a marketer, right? If you go back to some of the things I talked about earlier in terms of proliferation of channels, proliferation of devices, so there's never been more ways to reach a customer. There's never been more data about the customer using technologies like CDP. But ultimately, that brings a lot of complexity, right? So for us, being able to lean on advanced analytics, machine learning, and artificial intelligence to try distill that data down and work out, hopefully automatically, what the right next best offer for the customer is a really exciting opportunity in the industry. I don't think there's many companies that are doing it effectively. Certainly, we're working with some of our customers to be able to do it. And the good thing is that we've spent a lot of time and energy in Boxever, building this type of platform for the last number of years, and to see it now kind of hit the mainstream in marketing is tremendously exciting. So, for me, the big market movement over the last while is really a more widely accepted view of artificial intelligence and advanced analytics. And certainly our roadmap and the investments we're making over the next while is really aligned with that and helping marketers do more with less in terms of what's required to be able to process all this data and work out what the right next best action is across all these channels that marketers are faced with. Huge opportunity, right? But not to underestimate the challenge of the data, the volumes, the complexity. And I think we feel our role in this is to be able to reduce that complexity so marketers can do more with the platform.
Absolutely. Well, David, thank you so much for all the great information and examples. And I want to thank everyone who joined us on the video today and say to be sure and check out Martech Advisor's YouTube channel for other executive interviews. And Dave, thanks again for being here today.
Delighted. Thanks for having me, Ginger.